honestly doesn't seem fair.
Okay, thank you.
And we've heard, we know that California set some quite aggressive goals for target by 2035, not a win. And also here, there's talk of pilot projects, and what's the planned phasing in of the wind in California? What's the realistic plan for development?
Yeah, so California has goals. They set 2030 goals of 2 to 5 gigawatts and 45 goals of 10 gigawatts. Sorry, 25 gigawatts. Those are goals. So the real drivers of development will be, can projects get permitted by the state and the federal government? Are there port facilities where you can actually construct the projects? Is there transmission developed in sufficient capacity where projects can interconnect? And very importantly, are there power purchase agreements with the state or load serving entities to buy the power from a project? Without all of those things, a project won't be constructed. Those are a lot of things that need to come together. Those are the things driving how much deployment will happen and when, much more than the state goals. The state goals are really important. It's certainly a signal that that's where the state wants to go. I don't think anyone at this point is believing that the 2030 goals are achievable. Much more realistic. We'll see first projects coming online 2035 and a bit later. Especially now given the federal permitting pause, but also the reality of how long it takes to develop projects, the state of the supply chain, et cetera. So I think we'll know more when projects in California could be coming online after the state conducts its first central procurement solicitation, which is expected late 27, probably 2028. So if the state does award contracts in that period, then we'll know about how much will come online through 2035. And I think that procurement is through 2037 online dates. And the state is authorized up to 7.6 gigawatts through that program.
Can I ask a follow-on to that? California set some pretty aggressive supply chain, I'm going to call them goals, with regard to either the manufacturing and supply chain into the wind energy. And I don't know that that's all completely worked out yet in terms of how they want to implement that. But does the industry or the trade association have a position on the supply chain and manufacturing sort of, I guess, attempt to seize the value chain of that supply chain?
Yeah, so I think what you're referring to is there was a bill passed 2 years ago, AB3, that the Energy Commission is going to start working on this sort of the second half of this year, which asks the state to look at the feasibility of achieving 50% and 60% local content within California. Importantly, that percentage, how you calculate it, is not defined. And we're going to be encouraging the state not to just look at like the big tier 1 components, but down to tier 3 and materials, and like look at all of the things that California could produce that benefits the offshore wind industry, not just the big shiny things. From the industry perspective, we generally are going to be resistant to very firm local content requirements, because they do, especially for the first phase of projects that are where the supply chain is limited globally, will certainly drive up costs pretty significantly. And there's always a very important balance between making sure projects reap the benefits that we want, but also that they're affordable and that ratepayers are justified in investing in them. So we will generally be, resistant to having like firm local content requirements as part of solicitations, but the state looking at it and setting some goals and figuring out what kind of carrots they can set so that, of course, California benefits as much as feasible with that cost benefit balance. We support that.
And
Great.
I'll just add that setting up, like, nobody wants to build a factory that only works for 2 years and then needs to fire all their workers and shut down. And factories only get built if there is a consistent supply or a consistent demand for their product. And so you need a real pipeline of projects that are going to be built in the United States before folks are willing to invest in a US supply chain. So you can mandate the US supply chain as much as you want, but the supply chain won't do it unless they have contracts. And so it's just kind of a fact of the matter. And it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. And we've learned some pretty hard lessons on the East Coast about states trying to mandate local supply chains and those supply chains not coming because there wasn't enough demand for them. And I'm happy to kind of talk more about that if folks are willing, but if folks have more questions, but it's a pretty important piece to remember.
Yeah, I think we understand, and I appreciate your time in talking with us, and hopefully if we have more questions, we can come back to you by email or phone call, so. Yeah, thank you very much, and that ends our public sessions for today.
Except,
Well, I'm sorry, we have commentary, my mistake, I'll hand it over to Michelle, we're opening the floor for public comment, but go ahead.
yes, thank you. Good afternoon. The committee would like to hear comments or thoughts from the public audience that's related to the committee's statement of task. And we're studying the impacts on shipping and commercial, tribal, and recreational fisheries from the development of renewable energy on the West Coast. And we would like to hear public comments related to those impacts specifically. We ask that you keep your remarks brief to allow others to share and for us to be able to stay on our agenda. If you could please raise your hand and wait to be called on if you're online. And then turn your cameras on while you're speaking if you're able to do that. If you want to raise your hand, that's down at the bottom. That's the react button that's got like a heart-shaped icon. You click on that, there's the raise hand feature will be available to you. Yeah, Scott McMullen, welcome, Scott. You
Okay.
are.
Yeah, thank you very much. For the record, my name is Scott McMullen. I serve as the chairman of the Oregon Fishermen's Cable Committee. And I think this could apply to your task at hand. But under the current BOEM process, if a developer leases an area with an existing submarine cable in it, or existing stakeholder, you could call them, under the BOEM rules, they pay lease fees for the entire site, even though the developer knows that there will be, and BOEM knows that there has to be a buffer zone around the existing cable for cable maintenance. That's just a fact of cables in the ocean. They need to be repaired from time to time, and you need to leave access, and anchors crossing over the cable would not allow that. BOEM has said that they will leave it up to the developer to work out the size of the buffer zone with the subsea cable owner. In the recent BOEM wind energy auction at the Humboldt site off Northern California, the lease price was over $2.1 million per square nautical mile. So we're talking real big money, and it's logical for the developer to want to get as much value out of that lease as possible. But the problem with this policy is a developer has a desire to get as much usable area out of the lease, and both the developer and the cable owner are in this awkward position of trying to negotiate for some of the same real estate. And I kind of feel it's just unethical to force wind energy companies to have to pay for area that they aren't able to utilize for wind energy development. So I think it would foster more certainty and equity if the BOEM process was altered so that the cable buffer zones for existing cables would be identified ahead of the lease, and that the lease not include areas that could be set aside for a cable buffer. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Scott. Do we have anyone else who wishes to provide comments to the committee this afternoon? Not seeing any hands, but just want to make sure we're providing that opportunity.
Well, we do want to thank all of you who listened in today and in our past public sessions. And we'll have additional public sessions, June 24th, 25th. We have a meeting in Seattle. Again, we'll have a public availability at that time. And also, if there's anyone in the public who would just like to contact us separately by email, you can do that. It does become public, any information that comes through to us. The National Academy is very transparent about this acquisition process. And also you can provide information through the website. Maybe Carolyn, you could provide background.
There is also a box on the project website, which is linked in the chat, to provide comment and email. There's an email for the staff that will make sure that comments go to the committee and will be discussed to include in our report.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you all, and hopefully you can join us in June. Thank you.